let's see, we will go to, I think I'll give the floor to Professor Sachs as the last one from the panel, because he's also co-organizing this. So if I can call on Professor Gao, please, to respond to some of the concrete questions. Professor Gao, please.
Yes, I would just have a very quick response to, I think, two main questions to me. First is about the possibility of the so-called sharing employment. At current status is that we just treat it as a temporary arrangement. So we still don't have a very complete measurement onto the quality of, let's say, the new bunch of employment. So that's still more serve as a temporary way to help those restaurants, travel agents who are experiencing a very difficult time, who has zero income, and then they can shift their positions to those online platforms to others. So, but maybe in the future we should have better, measurement on the quality, on their social security, on all other issues, to guarantee they can transit to a decent job in the future. So this may be for the first short question. Second is that the question asked about when China can recover. I think actually if you compare the COVID-19 to SARS 17 years ago, it actually seems to have the similar rhyme. So that means very possible that the industrial activity will recover after 2 quarters. But actually the service sector, especially the offline service sector, can only recover maybe 3 quarters from the starting of the pandemic. So I have to say the whole years will no doubt China will experience still a deep downturn, but maybe can gradually recover at the end of this year. So that's maybe my observation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Gao. And I will turn it over to Mr. Muhleisen for your comments, please.
Thank you very much. I would just like to respond to one question about how to restore policy space. There's no magic bullet in a sense, unfortunately. It's still the same old recipes. But again, as we said, it's important to move toward a more sustainable economy going forward. And indeed, productivity and growth are kind of the first order of business, so to speak, for restoring policy space. So that means that we need to really create the conditions for such growth to occur, including, as Ms. Higgins noted, by making sure there's international trade, that there's sufficient competition, that there's an investment climate in which companies can rebuild or move into new sectors. Second, it's the importance of sound macro policies. There is indeed a trade-off between, say, too fast consolidation and providing sufficient support to the economy. But of course, the key really here is to provide confidence to investors, so as to keep spreads and interest rates low, sound governance, that will help also. Now, the one big issue I mentioned already in my talk, I just wanted to reaffirm it, is the issue of how to deal with debt. And that will require more thinking. Debt restructuring on a broad scale will only work if there's adequate burden sharing between all the parties involved. That includes Paris Club creditors, non-Paris Club creditors, the private sector, and to some extent also, of course, domestic investors. So that has to be sorted out. It's a key policy agenda for the next couple of months and years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Ghosh, please, for your comments.
Thank you very much. I will also try to be brief. And forgive me if I disagree a little bit with the previous speaker, because I feel it's too much business as usual. We are no longer in a world where business as usual will work. We cannot actually pretend that we can go back to those old policy prescriptions that well, actually didn't work so well even in normal times, but certainly will not work now. I think it is absolutely essential to recognize across the world and within different countries that we have to have a New Deal. Just to remind you all that the basic elements of the New Deal in Roosevelt's day were massive recovery based on massive public investments, very, very large increase in public expenditure for both demand and supply, regulation of both labor markets and a whole range of other markets, and regulation of how capital behaves, and redistribution. These are absolutely essential, and we have to base all of our recovery and strategies for dealing with climate change on all of these. And so we need a New Deal, but it shouldn't just be green, it has to be multicolored. It has to be green, of course. We have to make it environmentally conscious and deal with the existential challenge of climate change. But it also has to be purple. It has to recognize the care economy and reward it and remunerate it. I'm so glad that some parliamentarians raised this important issue, and to actually put much more public investment into care. And it has to be red. It has to actually be more equitable. So it has to tax the rich, it has to tax multinational corporations, and it has to redistribute both wealth and income and provide universal social services in a way that actually gives everybody equitable access.
Thank you, Dr. Ghosh. And now closing remarks from Professor Sachs, please.
Thank you very much. I think that if somebody would turn off their camera, then I can turn on my camera, but I'm told that there's a limit right now. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful workshop and the excellent questions. I'm very pleased and impressed, and I hope the parliamentarians continue to operate in this way, connected through online webinars to discuss issues globally. The exchange of ideas is extremely important, and we need the parliamentarians to be playing a very significant role in this. Let me just emphasize 4 quick points. First, it is possible that there is a quick recovery, and we've seen through Professor Yuning Gao's comments China's quick recovery, but that depends on ending the epidemic. There can be no quick recovery without public health control, so put that as the highest priority. The second, we need a recovery that is based on investment, as Professor Ghosh just said, and I think her comments were exactly right. This will be and should be a green recovery. It should be a digital recovery, because digital, if extended in universal access, gives people access to services, health, education, governance, payments that they otherwise won't have. So I would focus on green, and I would focus on digital. But third, it needs to be a jobs-led recovery, and that means a strategy also for public jobs that are following public investments in social welfare activities, such as care activities, as we just heard, investments in creating the new green economy. Europe's Green Deal, I think, is a very, very important initiative in this regard. And I hope very much that Europe will support the initiative recently of Chancellor Merkel and President Macron for 750 billion euros of public investment at the European level. And I want to appeal to Sweden and Denmark to get out of the frugal four, so-called. This is a huge mistake. What this is some of the most progressive countries in the world saying they don't want grant financing for a green recovery. But of course, Europe is going to need ample grant financing. So I really want to appeal to especially our friends in Denmark and in Sweden to be very strong supporters of a European-wide grant financing, the 750 billion euros that have been called for, and to part company with the more conservative countries that are opposing that. Now, I would say for all the parliamentarians in the rest of the world, make your green deals that can be partners with the European Green Deal. In China, promote a sustainable Belt and Road initiative. In the ASEAN countries, promote an ASEAN Green Deal. In the Gulf region, support a Green Deal that is based on solar energy and new green activities. This can create lots of jobs if it's properly financed. And to Senator Higgins, who mentioned many questions of just transition and ideas of sharing work, 4-day work week, improved labor standards, and so forth. This will be the time for that kind of creativity. We will have the chance actually for better lives, more leisure, more shared work time, higher productivity if we're fair about it. If we're not fair about it, we're going to end up in a disaster where the mega wealthy, just a few people, own the whole economy. This is what's happening in the United States. Mr. Bezos and his Amazon, he now has $150 billion of net worth. It's terrifying, the concentration of wealth that is taking place in the United States, because we are a plutocracy, unfortunately. So make sure that there is a fair, inclusive, jobs-based public investment recovery, and all regions of the world should work together on this. In the US, we have our politics to do to get rid of our right-wing, plutocratic, populist government right now. But I think most of the world wants a socially inclusive, sustainable recovery. It's possible. This pandemic needs to end quickly, and it needs to be followed by social justice. And I think that the IPU and the Parliamentarians for Global Goals and the Parliamentarians for Global Action can do a huge amount to make that a reality. So thank you very, very much for today's workshop and for the great honor to be with you.
Gabriela, do you want to go first?
Thank you very much, Kirsten, and thank you again, Jeff, for this wonderful opportunity of working together. We know that the parliamentarians of the world have a huge responsibility, and that's why IPU is here. We believe in cooperation, we believe in social justice, and we believe that if we are working together, we are going to achieve the much needed results. When we talk about what's happening now, yes, you went as always to the most important point, equality. At the end, I'm sure that we are going to eradicate this pandemic, and I am sure that we are going to understand the lesson. But we need a plan, and the most important plan now, and that's why we created this webinar, is understanding that SDGs are the roadmap for the planet, for the world's recovery. In the IPU data, there are not the best news. We have only about 13% of the parliaments really working on SDGs, getting engaged, having specialized committees, having specialized discussions. We need to do a lot more. We need to take a look to all legislation and to see that no one is left behind. We need to go to budgets and to prioritize those persons, the most vulnerable ones. Jeff was pointing something very important, and it is that we need to take care of our jobs and salaries. We need to fight poverty. We need to eradicate hunger. At the end, everything comes to the parliamentary table. We need to translate these international commitments, this global roadmap, into national and local realities. It is in our hands to change people's lives. I am sure that if we continue working together, exchanging these best practices, understanding that the way to go is already there and we need to implement it, I am sure that these 46,000 parliamentarians of the planet are going to change it. I am absolutely sure. So thank you very much to all my colleagues that participated. We clearly need more time for these webinars because there were a lot of colleagues that wanted to take the floor. And we also promised that for the next webinars, we are going to use more languages. So thank you so much, Jeff, for this wonderful initiative from the Interparliamentary Union. We really appreciate it. And of course, now working with Kirsten and the parliamentarians for the global goals, I'm sure that will be an amazing experience. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining. I just want to end by saying also thank you to all the co-organizers. It's been such a privilege to work with you, and thank you for everyone for joining from all around the world. I'm thrilled to have had these 2 hours with all of you and want